It's 2 a.m. Monday, January 13th, 2025. You've stumbled into an odd little session here. I'm going to spend most of tonight just sitting, trying to work through a cipher that we've received in the game we're playing, a custom case that's been written for the channel called, Hungry Hearts is the name of the case, but Improv New York Noir is the overarching heading here. But wasn't a pre-scheduled session. It's mostly just going to be me sitting here in silence working on this cipher. I don't pretend to be skilled at this, so if you're watching in the channel, you may be able to figure out things I can't. I don't want a solution. So you're basically just going to use this to fall asleep, perhaps, but I'm going to use it to get stuff on the record. I'm going to ramble a little bit as I go about issues of frustration, talk about what happened at today's session that I got frustrated about and how to fix that and why, and think about, maybe I'll talk a little bit about some game design issues involving ciphers. We'll sort of ramble on about stuff while I'm sitting here working on this. So I may interact a little bit with the channel if people have questions or want to talk about whatever, but don't be surprised if big chunks of this are just me sitting here in silence. I've got my coffee. Hopefully you're either trying to fall asleep or you've got some coffee and tea and you've put this on in the background. So before I get into this won't make any sense if you haven't been watching. This probably won't make any sense no matter what. But it really won't make any sense if you haven't been watching along with us as we've played through this improv New York Noir case. So let me talk a little bit about what happened this afternoon, where we are before I get started working on this cipher here. So we've been playing this fantastic case written by a viewer of the channel for the channel, and we've gotten the penultimate letter of the case, the last letter where we're supposed to solve the case, and that happened this afternoon. Just sort of setting the stage here. So the case has been amazing and wonderful letters, an engaging story. And this was our last letter before where we're supposed to solve the case. And the sessions that we play on the channel for these Sunday afternoon sessions are about an hour long, maybe maximum 2 hours if we're really engaged in a case and we talk about theories and talk about the story. And what happened this afternoon is we got our letter, and maybe a difficult letter in general, because the previous letter, sort of all of our theories came true, and we got so many juicy facts that made us feel like everything was clicking into place. And this last letter was pretty thin on usable facts. So it sort of was a difficult position to put us in today in terms of being able to use the information we got. It felt like it wasn't obvious what we could use. So we had a lot to think about there. And then we had to, the goal of that session was to come up with our final solution to the case. But two additional things happened that threw me off track, that sort of threw me for a curve and rattled me. Now, it didn't help that my normal sleep schedule has me up overnight, so the Sunday afternoon sessions are always a little tricky for me to manage time-wise, whether I stay up all night into the afternoon. So I was tired. But in addition to trying to solve the case this afternoon, two extra things came in that letter. One was a cipher, and one was a letter that said, you got to make a decision in the next 5 minutes. So there was those two things pulling in different directions. And then the cipher was hard enough that after spending 20-30 minutes on it, I didn't make much progress. And so I was really rattled by the whole thing. And if you watch this channel, you see I get frustrated quite frequently working on puzzles. Sometimes I get very angry at the puzzle design. Sometimes I'm angry at myself. Sometimes I'm angry at the chat. Sort of all those things happened this afternoon, and we ended up having to just abort the session. Now, maybe abort's not the right word, because we can figure out the formats for all these, but the point was that we've been playing these 1 hour sessions, and so the expectation was, my expectation, probably the expectation of viewers, is that we would wrap up that session within that 2 hour period, submit our solution. But all of that came to a screeching halt because we couldn't. We couldn't submit our solution, even though there were lots of facts to think about, and I was ready. But we had this cipher, which was this chunk of unsolved piece of our mystery, especially since there wasn't that much else in the letters to use. And so we couldn't. We wanted to solve it, but we couldn't. And the expectation of scheduling of what we were going to be doing and how long it would take got thrown off. So we just at the end said, all right, we got to stop here. We'll figure out how to solve the cipher offline, online, together on Discord, and then come back and then try to re-engage with this letter so that we can get back into the exciting story. And then the additional time constraint about making this decision, I don't work well under time pressure. There are lots of people that do. I don't. And then there was a separate thing with the channel. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about those of you who have been joining me for many of these playthroughs. I don't know how you stick with me, and why everyone hasn't gotten frustrated and unsubscribed and quit the channel in rage when I get angry at the chat. But I've talked about it a little bit. I'm going to ramble a little bit about this as well here now. There are a couple, there's a science of frustration that I'm curious about because I can see it in myself, and there's lots of frustration. I've noticed a couple things cause frustration. One is the feeling of sort of being constrained, like you can't, things are holding you in, whether it's like a jacket or whatever. But once the frustration starts, everything triggers it. Every little thing, a sound, a noise, something, an itch, everything gets snowballs and creates a little positive feedback loop. And one of the things that triggers my frustration is divided attention. When you're trying to do 3 things at once, or your brain is trying to go 3 places at once, it becomes, it rattles you, it rattles me. And I've got a system here for interacting with the chat that works pretty well. I can see the chat comments here off to the side. There's a little monitor, and I can bring them up on the screen. But 99% of the time, it's very fun to sit in front of the camera and just talk. But while I'm talking, a part of my brain is keeping an eye on the chat, and I've got a little light here that the chat can alert me, but I'm sort of on automatic when I'm talking, but sometimes I'm reading something or talking, and a little bit of my brain is paying attention to the chat a little bit and trying to interact with it. But then when someone says something, I'm in the middle of a sentence or thinking, I'm sort of trying to process both things at the same time. Now, most of the time, I just ignore the chat if I need to focus. But occasionally we'll get involved in a puzzle or something, and then I feel like my attention is being pulled in multiple directions. But by far, the most difficult thing about interacting with those of you in the chat is the delay, the YouTube delay, which can be up to like 10 seconds. That means if I ask a question, it takes you 10 seconds to hear it before you can type your answer in the chat. And if you ask something and I reply to it as soon as I see it, it still takes you 10 seconds to see what I say. That means having an actual interactive conversation is extremely painful. And that really becomes frustrating when someone will say something that's not clear to me. And especially when I'm involved, my attention is divided in 3 different places. I'm not focused 100% on what you're saying. And typically there might be a series of things that people have said, but I'm only focusing on the last one because I feel like a little uncomfortable just saying, okay, hold on, I'm talking to you, now let me read this in silence. So I'm like trying to talk as I'm doing this. And very frequently what will happen is when I start to get frustrating, someone will say something like either suggest a solution or an idea, and I'm trying to juggle these things, and I look at this thing that someone has just whipped off a little one-line sentence, and I feel like you have to be clear, you have to make more complete, full sentences so that I can process that line and understand what you're saying. And today we had a very similar thing happen with the Cipher, with Debbie trying to give me some help. And frequently those who try to give me help are the people who get my ire the most. But let me just sort of explain it from my standpoint. So here we've got this Cipher. I'm looking at it. Here it is here, right? I'm trying to figure it out. So 50%, 80% of my brain is working on the Cipher, trying to come up with ideas. And the other 20% is talking. And then the other 20% is trying to understand the advice that I'm being given in the chat, but I'm careful because I got to be careful I don't get a solution from the chat because I don't want the solution. I want to work on it. And then Debbie is saying, don't try to do this manually because you'll never do it. So then my brain's going, okay, I got to work that in. Should I stop trying to do this? But my brain's already trying to figure it out. Okay, don't try to figure it out manually. It's too much work. It's too much brute force. And then Debbie's saying, use an online solver. Go online and use the solver. And then Matt's saying, yes, you can do it manually. So I'm like, okay, I can do it manually. I can't do it manually. I should start. My brain wants to work on it, but I should stop because it's wasted time. And then use an online cipher solver, which for what cipher? You can't just go online and dump it in. Then you add the real frustration of having to use this Android tablet from here. If I'm on my desktop, I can use the mouse, I can copy, paste, I can search. I don't have ads popping up. Here on the tablet, there's Android. The ads are just inundating you. Nothing works right. The keyboard on screen, everything is uncomfortable to use. And then there's the question, do I want the online thing to solve it for me? If we know what the cipher is, like I'm not opposed to using it. Once we figure out the interesting part of us figuring out what cipher it is, like if it's a Caesar cipher shift 5, I'm fine with using the online tool to brute force, not to do the brute force, to actually do the work once we figured it out. But we haven't even identified what kind of cipher this is. I'm still working on that. Online, it sounds like Debbie was saying basically the way she solved it is she found one of the online deciphering tools that doesn't require you to know anything, and it just tries a million different possible codes and approaches until it pops out the right answer. Well, that's the last thing I want. So all of those things coming at me, sometimes it's just overwhelming. So that's a little discussion of behind the scenes of frustration from my standpoint and an apology. I don't mean to get angry at those of you trying to help me in the chat. It's just a general frustration and anger. And I've noticed maybe not everyone is like this, but maybe you can sympathize. When I get frustrated and angry, the inanimate objects get the blame, right? Like the pen, the ink that runs out. Probably a dozen times have I gotten furious at a pen and smashed it and thrown against the wall. It's not, I mean, you're blaming an inanimate object. I really feel like most of the blame is directed inward. It's like you're angry at yourself for getting angry, or for why have you kept the pen? If the pen runs out of ink, you've put it back. Like, it's mostly angry at oneself. Angry at myself, but it gets taken out on whatever's nearby, you know? And, okay, so that's all lead up. Now, I'm going to discuss later some thoughts I have on the use of Cipher in games and pacing and what makes them fun versus what makes them unpleasant. We've played a lot of games where there's Ciphers. Some people love them. Some people really dislike them. I'm somewhere in the middle. But I do have some thoughts about it. We're going to come back to all that. But now I'm going to work on the Cipher for a little bit. And I'm going to try to use the approach that I've tried to advocate for, which is what I call the crack the case black stories approach, which is to force yourself to not try to solve something, but rather try to brainstorm efficiently. Brainstorm effectively about something. So that's what we're going to do here. But mostly I'm going to do it without worrying about talking to you. And we know already from Debbie that you could solve this cipher. If you went to an online tool and just typed it in and said, try everything you can think of, see if you can decode this, you're going to get an answer. So let me make clear. I don't want an answer from the chat. If you see a little bit of a clue of something or an idea, you can put it in the chat. Maybe I'll look at it. But as I've said, the difficult situation for you in these kinds of circumstances is that you can type ideas if you're wrong. Like if you're right, if you have a giant insight, I probably don't want to see it. So maybe the safest thing is if there is someone awake working on this with me, feel free to say, hey, I think I figured something out. Let me know if you want a hint or whatever. Or I think I figured out some hint I could give you. Tell me when you want a hint, etc. But don't give me the answer here. All right, so let's try to spend a little bit of time brainstorming this cipher. And then at some point, we'll come back and talk a little bit more about general ramblings on game design and the use of ciphers. Is anyone here with me here? I see Rob has stopped in to say hello. This is a little bit of an unusual thing. We have probably did this a couple times before. When I played Adventures by Gaslight, the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective expansion that has a very difficult code, we spent some real time offline and a little bit of time on the channel just sitting here working on the code. So we have done this before a couple years ago, but it's been a while. Well, let me say one more thing about frustration because it's very appropriate for what we're doing today. A huge part of frustration with puzzles and codes and stuff has to do with expectations. And this does tie into the game design issues. If I get a little code in a puzzle, if someone gives you a cipher and they say, this is going to take you 10 minutes. It's easy. It's easy. It's going to take you 10 minutes. It's so obvious. Once you see it, once I give you this, it's going to take you 5 minutes. You're going to solve it. And I give you that. Well, you've got a little bit of pressure because you think, okay, if I take longer than 10 minutes, I look like an idiot, whatever. Okay, now, if I tell you it's a 5-minute easy cipher, you're going to be done. You're going to be off having dinner in 10 minutes. And an hour goes by and you're still working on it. You're going to be frustrated. I'm going to be very frustrated. A million things are going to be going through my head about why is it taking me so long? What's so obvious that I'm missing? It's got to be right here. It's got to be something really stupid. I'm going to feel like an idiot. And why am I hitting this wall? I should be done by now. I should have been done a half hour ago. And by the hour mark, you're angry. I'm angry, frustrated. On the other hand, if I give you a cipher and I say, this is going to take you a month. There's no way you're going to get it in one day. You're going to have to think hard about it. You're going to be sleeping on it. You're going to be coming up with ideas, and an idea, you're going to try it, and it's going to take you 20 minutes to write code to test the idea, and then it'll be wrong, and then you'll have to try another approach, and you'll be searching online for ideas and asking your friend for ideas, and it's going to take you a month. And at the end of the month, maybe you'll crack the Zodiac's third cipher, and maybe you'll solve a murder, but it's going to be really hard. And you shouldn't expect that you're going to get it anytime soon, and it might take you a month, it might take you 2 months, you might never solve it. If I give you that setup, if someone gives me that setup, it's a totally different emotional experience. The frustration has a totally different feel. After an hour, if you haven't made any progress, you haven't solved it, you don't feel frustrated like that. You feel like, you might say, wow, do I really want to spend a month on this? Am I getting enough satisfaction? Is the payoff going to be big enough? But you don't feel that kind of frustration. Now, you've spent the same hour on it in both circumstances. It's just in one case, your expectations were that you were going to be done and it was going to be easy. And in the other case, your expectations were totally different, that this was a super long, difficult thing. And you completely recalibrate your emotional frustration stuff. It's totally different. And I think that is a real key to these things. And it's a key to most of the puzzles. Like, if your expectations are set properly, it really frames the whole experience differently. And I think that's a big chunk of why today's session went off the rails a bit. Because my expectations were that this was going to be a 10-minute thing. And maybe if you're lucky, it is a 10-minute thing. But if it's not, anyway. Okay. So that's that. Now, let's spend some time. I'm going to talk a little bit out loud. Now, it's not natural to talk these things out, at least not for me. There are people who are good at it, but that's part of what I'm trying to learn to get better at. So we've got this cipher. Here it is. What do we know about it? Most of what we know about it is here on this page, although there's another page of the letter that when Alice basically said, hey, we found this cipher. You can see what it is. It's a bunch of lines, and then each lot, and then a bunch of 3 ranks of cards. 4, 5, king, 3, 3, 10, ace, something, jack. The question marks are transcribed smudges, so no one knows. They don't know what that thing is. It sure looks like they're in pairs, that this sequence belongs to this line, and so on. We know these are card players, so we know these are cards, but we think they're talking about illegal, maybe insider trading, stock market stuff, or plans to gather insider information, etc. What else do we know? We know they're playing a game called Discard Hearts. That's the card game that this group is playing. We know a bunch of the names of the people who are involved. We know the recipient of this, or the person, we don't know actually who's written this, but we know the person who was in possession of this is this guy, Maurice Hamoud. In fact, I was looking at letters, but so one kind of way to attack these kinds of ciphers is if you expect certain text to appear, like names of people. So we have a bunch of names that we might expect to see on here. Then you could try to match those. From looking at this, some things seem rather obvious. First of all, it sure looks like, leaving aside the actual letters, it looks like the format of English grammar, right? It looks like the punctuation has been left unchanged. We've got an exclamation in a parenthetical here. We've got periods at the end of sentences and so on. So it looks like the letters have been scrambled, but the punctuation is the same, is left alone. We expect this to be an English sentence, English sentences, instructions, plans, we're not sure. No question marks, all statements, but some stereotypical patterns here, like here's a comma and a sentence, like phrasing that you would expect. In fact, I started marking up. Where's our original that I marked up? All right, doesn't matter. I've made multiple copies. Maybe I'll start marking here what jumps out. So we've got this exclamatory phrase here. If you're looking for things that you might latch onto, then we've got some odd punctuation occasionally. In fact, here's one with a colon. That's intriguing. Like if you were trying to see if you could guess certain words, these might be good clues. Like this might be like something to tell this person, like talk to blank, ask about this or whatever. So we've got some odd punctuations here. This little phrasing here also catches my eye. Like it feels like if I just gave you those blanks, like 3 blanks, 5 blanks, comma, 3 blanks, even without any letters, you might be able to guess what this phrase should be. Like there aren't that many English sentences that have like a 3-letter, a 5-letter comma, 3-letter, 5-letter comma, and then a phrase. So maybe that should be helpful. Same thing here. Like this is an odd, there aren't that many words, although some of these could be stock symbols for all we know, but there aren't that many kinds of words that get split with a /, etc. Here's another one. Big long words are also very suspicious. Now, when you're looking at substitution ciphers, other big clues are single letter words because there's only the I or the A, really. So is it an I? Is it an A? Now, okay, so there's that. There's one set of issues. The next thing that jumps out, when you look at a cipher, I mean, the Caesar cipher is one of the easiest, most common ciphers. So you're always looking for a Caesar cipher, and especially anytime when you've got numbers that look like they could be offsets. So if we just saw a single digit here, we might think, okay, this is probably going to be a Caesar cipher with an offset of 4. But we've got 3 numbers. Do we have 3 numbers? We've actually got what could be considered 3 numbers, right? If we think of the other suits as numbers, you might imagine that we've got ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king. Ace could be on this side too, but it would make sense that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it is one obvious way would be to turn the king into a 13. Then we've got 3 numbers, 4, 5, 13. So how do we use 3 numbers? Well, that is a good question. But maybe helping shed some light on this idea are some oddities like this. Here's our 3 U's, and somewhere else we have 3 F's. Now, there probably are English words in the dictionary that have 3 of the same letter in a row, but no common words, no words you would expect to see in such a small set of text, certainly not twice. So the fact that we've got a triple of the same letter in a word, in fact, look at this word, it's 2 of these and 3 of these. Okay, that tells you that you're not, that should tell us, suggest that we're not dealing with a straightforward Caesar cipher. In other words, we're not shifting all of these letters by a certain amount, because if we did, all of these U's would map to the same target letter, and that just doesn't work. We're not going to get a letter. We're not going to get a word with 3 E's in here. And it's long enough that it's not going to be a stock market symbol, etc. So that suggests it's not a straightforward Caesar cipher. And it's not a substitution cipher. It's not an arbitrary cipher where each letter could map to any other letter. It's just, that's the problem here. So how do we get around the fact that this U and this U and this U have to decode to different letters? Well, there's a bunch of different ways we could do it. But one of the ways that seems to be suggested by this is that maybe what we've got is that every third letter is being operated, like every third letter has got a 3 modifier, and then the second letter is a 3 modifier, and then the third letter is a 10 modifier, and then it cycles back to a 3. So you might guess that like the U is a Caesar 3, G is a Caesar 3, Y is a Caesar 10, T is a Caesar 3, Q is a Caesar 3, D is a Caesar 10. That's what my intuition was, but we tried it and couldn't make it work. So it's not that, or it's not that simple. Now, lots of other possibilities, and we're not going to be able to deduce what the right answer is. We're just going to have to try to experiment and flail about. But we can think about some other things. So let me just point out, I did somewhere look up and found what they called the name of that. And look at what Martin Gardner, a mathematician writer, calls this. He calls this a date shift cipher. To make a shift cipher harder to break, in other words, to make a Caesar cipher harder to break, you can vary the amount of the shift from letter to letter. There are many ways to do this. One clever way is to use the date on which you send the message as your key. And so you can see what he's done here is, here are the numbers 102173, which he's written out as 102173, and then he's written them on top of the letters. So just as I said, Caesar 4, Caesar 5, and Caesar 13 or 3310. Although in his case, he's actually suggesting rather than shift by 10 and shift by 21, you just combine them all and always shift by a single digit. So here the M is shifted by 1, the Y by 0, the R by 2, and so on. And then you just repeat, just as I was suggesting this way. But I wonder, what I did was I did 3310, but we could do 3310. That would be interesting idea. 4513. So you could say 4513, 4513, etc. Maybe we'll try that. I don't think that's going to be it, but okay. So he calls that a date shift cipher. Shift ciphers, often called Caesar ciphers, because the great Roman Emperor Julius Caesar used them. All right, so I mean, a Caesar cipher is always something that jumps to mind, but could it be something else? Sure, lots of different possibilities. Let me pose another couple things for us to think about. It seems instinctually correct to me that these are the keys to this. Now, 3 parts, that is often a sign of a book code, right? Like 4th page, 5 paragraph, 13th word. And that might be the key you use to decipher this. That's tempting, but we don't really have a book. There's a little suggestion here about, I found some old reference book in the back covered in cobwebs. Search the web, I'm sure you'll find something else to speed this up. But now we do have actually in our case a newspaper at some point, but it happened in the middle of our case, and it's 3 columns wide. It's hard to see how this would be used as a book code into here. It would mean everything would have happened to happen after October 11th. The arson was in the middle of our case, so it doesn't feel like it's right. What are other possibilities, though? Could these not even be related to the key? Could these be dates? Doesn't seem likely. If you look at the range here, we've got 4, a 3, an ace, a 3. Also, you can see the game designer has created this thing where some of these are unknown. And if it was a book cipher type thing, this would be very hard to figure out, right? If it's a Caesar cipher thing where every 3rd letter is encoded by one of these, then actually this becomes a fun little constraint satisfaction, right? Like if I know how to do it, then for this one, I'm going to get every 3rd letter, and maybe I can guess what the other 2 would be. So having these be wild cards that you have to figure out only is feasible if it's something easy enough that we could guess a couple of the offsets given some of them. Like, feels like we could figure these out. But if it was a book code, I don't think that's possible. So I would lean towards that, and the fact, again, from a game design perspective, the fact that there are these wild cards for some of these suggests to me that that's part of the puzzle, which means these are going to be the keys rather than like dates. Because if they were dates, this wouldn't be really an interesting puzzle. Another observation from looking at this is that this one seems to me the most appealing one to attack. Why is that? Well, because we're not 100% sure how to use this king. Is it a 13? We don't know. But this one has the advantage of being pure numbers, and the first 2 are the same. So if it was Caesar shifting 3, 3, it seems like it's easier for us to manually do it. you could imagine other ways. Like, what if this was being used as a written key? Like if we had a keyword cipher where you sort of write the alphabet A, B, C, D, and then you write a keyword under it, and then the A card, like if this was help was your keyword, you'd keep writing help, or there's different ways to do it. But then you could say, okay, so you add an H to the first letter, an E to the second letter, an L to the second letter. Like you could imagine that writing these out, the words 4, 5, king, 4, 5, king underneath as your keyword. But again, I think then we hit the same problem we had over here, whereas these don't become really solvable with that approach. It's too difficult to figure out all the different ways. So that suggests to me from a game meta perspective, unlikely. It does feel to me like these should be probably numeric offsets, but I could be wrong. And you could, if they are shifts, which is what jumps out, then you could imagine they could go backward, they could go forward, there could be. Now we have a little bit of meta information in that Debbie claimed that the online solver just took this and figured it out. That suggests to me that it's not something totally crazy, that it's probably some sort of known cipher. Like, that's very suspicious that the online solver was able to figure it out. I don't even know if Debbie had an opportunity to put in this, just gave it this, and it tried different keywords or something. I'm trying not to use that information too much. All right, now let's see if we can make any other observations about this as a set, because I think that feels like a good first step. What would you call it? A sanity check. Like if it's true that each of these is using different key, and maybe these are the keys, you might expect that the letter frequencies would be different. In other words, if E is the most common letter in English, then we should get a different most common letter in each of these things. Now that's made more difficult by the fact that we think there's going to be a moving adjustment, so that like one of these U's is turning into the letter E, another one is turning into an R, and another one turning into something. But I wonder if we can see differences here. Does anything jump out? Or maybe maybe it's the opposite. Maybe we see that they all have the same frequency of letters. That would be a mark against the idea that these are different keys. Some of these almost look like they're partially unencrypted. Okay, let's look at this one. What do we see? Like lots of Q's, Q's, a Q, 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 double Q here. Then we've got them everywhere. Like this one has a lot of Q's. This one, no, just the one. This one, none at all. Okay, that feels like then maybe we're on the right track about idea that this is different keys for each line. Look at this one, FR, FR, FR. Any other double patterns that jump out? QY, QY. Here's again probably a phrase, like probably not that many phrase letters. 2 letters, 3 letters, 2 letters. I frequently, when we do these ciphers, focus in on the 3-letter words, like look for the. There's often and the. Like, boy, feels like it could be the. And I looked at this one. Actually, this one was sort of tempting to be TH, is like the TU and then GH, like down by 1, up by 1, TH, then the Y is a tricky one. And it's much easier, if we're right, that it's sort of every third letter is up by whatever, then hitting that, working on that first word is much easier because you know this is the 3, the 10. Whereas if you're trying to look in the middle of the sentence, you don't even know where it is. So we may try just rewriting these in different ways. Like maybe we'll write every third letter. In fact, I'm tempted to try that at the start. And I'm tempted to focus on this line just because obviously it's going to be easier than doing one of these blanks. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by rewriting this line here. This is going to be our attack line, this UGY. I'm going to rewrite that under the theory that maybe every third letter is handled differently. And again, this is one of these things where this could be the totally wrong approach. I just don't know. All right, so what am I going to try to do here? Here's my idea. I'm going to rewrite this line here, or at least the first bit of it, splitting up the letters. So in other words, U, G, Y, T, Q, D, I, J, K, comma, U, G, Y, T, Q, D, I, J, K, W, V, B, J, Q, D, N, F, A, G, B, X, X, G, A. Let's stop there. All right. This is the first, second, third. First letter, second letter, third letter, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and so on. Let me make sure that's right, because if I'm wrong, everything gets messed up. U, G, Y, T, Q, D, I, J, comma. There's a space after this Y. U, G, Y, T, Q, D, I, J, comma, K, W, V, B, J, Q, D, N, F, A, G, E, X, X, G, A, period. Okay, and then there's a space after the F. So the reason I've done this is so that I can experiment with using a different modifier for every third character. So in other words, if I'm going to assign this the 3, this the 3, and this the 10 from here, can I make anything work with that? Another way you could do it is you could write on top of these 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. All right, I'm going to re-go through the things that seem to me to be most promising. It seemed to me most promising to do a Caesar shift of 3, 3, and 10, something like that. So let me just do that, but maybe make it a little easier for me to do my Caesar shifting here. Let's just experiment here. So a Caesar shift of 3 for these letters would give us what? U would be an X, T would be W, I would be an L, W would be a Y, J is an M, N is Q, G comes an I, G, H, I. Okay, going off by one. I know that. Hard to. Maybe I can do it this way. No, I can't. Okay. This one here. X, W, L, Z, M. Okay. Certainly doesn't. Seems unlikely that we've got a word starting with an X. So that does not seem very promising at all. But I have tried to force myself to not stop early, because frequently I do stop early. Frequently I'll say, okay, first word's not going to start with an X, so I abort. And then in the end, it comes back like the first word was a stock symbol, etc. So I'm going to keep doing this. And then we're going to come back to it. Okay, so again, a shift of 3 makes a G a J. Well, this is a shift of 10. Now, this gets a little weird here. This is where my thing is going to help me, hopefully. All right, so if it was 3, 3, 10 shifts, it would be the word X, J, I, W, T, N, L, M, U. Okay, so obviously that's not it. What if it was a shift backwards? If it's a shift backwards by 3, it's a little hard to look these up, but then a U becomes an R, a T becomes U, and L becomes an I. Easier to write code. If I was sitting in front of a desktop, I would just write all this in code and it would be so much quicker. But I'm not in front of a desktop. That's just the ground rules of doing this on YouTube. You can see already, if we go shift the other direction, we get RD. Okay, so that also doesn't sound like a word, but I'm going to keep doing this anyway, because these are the two most obvious things to me. Two most obvious ways this code would work to me. Y minus O. Now, if you wanted to talk about from a game design perspective, one of the things that this channel can be useful for, if you're the person writing ciphers, this gives you some idea of what it feels like for the person on the other end to have to go through. And I think, you're writing ciphers for a game. It's frequently, when you're making a puzzle for a game, it's hard to know how difficult a puzzle is going to be. When you see something solved, it seems obvious to you. It can be shocking how difficult it is, how many ways people can go off on the wrong path. Compared to, since you know the solution, compared to that. And I think it's not that uncommon for people to make ciphers that are just, they think, oh, they'll just figure out that you take the third letter of each word and transpose it. It'll be obvious. But really, with so many possibilities, that it's just painful to watch people flail around endlessly trying to figure something out. And maybe it means that when you write codes from a game design perspective, you have to ask yourself, what's your goal? Is your goal just to give the player some fun of being clever decoding something? In which case, the cipher does not have to be that difficult to give the player that enjoyment. Or is your goal really to make someone take a week or a month to decode something? And if that's your goal, if your goal really is to slow the player down to a dead stop and make them spend a week full time trying to decode something, then you should have a real reason for that. You need a philosophy of game design that says, yes, this is the experience I want to give the player. And well, I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to some thoughts on game design. If you want to make a hard cipher, how hard should a cipher be, etc. I'm going to circle back to that. I do have some thoughts on it, but let's just look at this for a second. So if we were looking at the shift left instead of shift right, normally Caesar cipher, you'd shift right. But if we're looking at shift right, we'd have R, D, O, Q, N, T, etc. That doesn't seem to spell anything. D-O-N-T. If I go this way, D-O-N-T, G-A-S-R, don't gas, R-N-T-D-Q-M. No, I was just thinking if there's any other way to. All right, so Caesar shifting by these offsets doesn't seem to work. Now, should I try 3310? That would be like the date shift, but using this not as a shift of 10, but as a 1 and a 0. That seems wrong, right? Because XJ is not a word and RD is not a word. So I think we're not looking at a standard Caesar cipher or date shift, we might call it here. So we have to do something else. And Could these words be in reverse? Could these letters for each word be in reverse? Probably not, because DR is not going to end a word. JX is not going to end a word. So it looks like my most instinctual guess about how this cipher would work seems wrong. It absolutely seems wrong. So we're going to have to try to figure out what else it could be. Now that's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate that it's not a Caesar cipher, because almost every other thing is painful to do by hand. But it's time for a break. So why don't we take a break here? We'll come back. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about using ciphers in games and philosophy that I think might make sense. And then we'll try to play around with this a little bit more. If you're watching, I'll see you in 5 minutes. No, 8 minutes. Well, we're back here, 6 viewers. Rob says, let's agree ciphers don't belong in narrative mysteries. Leave them for the puzzle boxes and escape rooms. Well, let's talk about it a little bit before we get back to trying something with no expectation that we'll solve it today. That's where we're going to set our expectations properly. So, as I said, I think you need to have a philosophy. Why is a cipher in the game? Is it for thematic reasons, in which case maybe it doesn't have to be that difficult, and you shouldn't. It's easy to think that a cipher is that's going to be easy, but it turns out that it's a very hard for a player, not knowing what you know as an author. But if the point is just to thematically add an encrypted message, then I think you can make it easy, because it's just the fun of having the player go through the motions of decrypting it, rather than it being a super challenging puzzle. Now, that's not to say that I don't think there's reasons to have a hard cipher in a game. Perhaps if it's the central element, like uncovering the mastermind's plot, as it may be in this letter. In this letter, it may be the key thing that wraps it all up, the key final proof. And maybe you want to make it difficult. Maybe you want players to struggle with it for a week. But let me talk about a couple elements here, assuming that's the case, assuming you don't just want an easy thing for thematics. I think there are a couple parts to talk about. One part I talk a lot about in puzzles is to make them not fragile. What do I mean by that? I mean that ideally a puzzle especially one with lots of moving parts, if the player makes a small mistake in the operation of decoding, that it doesn't completely break. So you might imagine in this case, if it really is every third letter gets shifted by a different thing, if you got off on track, then the whole thing becomes gobbledygook. And the more ways for a person who figures out the basic idea to still get completely lost, the worse. You want puzzles, ideally, where when the person makes a little bit of progress, they can see that they've gained a little bit of progress, and where there aren't so many permutations of things to try, all of which give zero progress, right? So a perfect example of a non-fragile puzzle, a cipher, which can be so satisfying, is an arbitrary substitution ciphers. These tend to be my favorites. That's where a given letter, like a Z, always maps to another letter, right? Like it may turn out that Z always maps to C, and then an I always maps to an O, and so on. And then the player has to figure out over time, okay, this is probably referring to the person's name, so this is going to be the. That tells me that F always maps to T, R always maps to H, T always maps to E. And then with that little bit of progress, you can start making the message come to life, right? And you can start filling in more. But the reason that's a good example of something that's not fragile is if you get a letter wrong, and it seems to make sense, but then it doesn't make sense down here, you can see each time you make a little bit of progress, you can see the result looks better. And you make a mistake, it degrades the result a little bit. It doesn't destroy everything. And there are certain kinds of codes and ciphers and puzzles where a small mistake degrades the answer a little bit, and a small improvement improves the answer a little bit, so you can see the gradient of progress. This is an issue that comes up a lot in artificial intelligence, the idea of problems where you can move along the gradient to improve your answer, and then occasional nonlinear areas where you have to get worse before it gets better. But the more anti-fragile a puzzle can be, the more you can have gradients, the better. But now let's talk about a separate issue. And I think I'm not sure what the right phrase for this would be, but let me give you a good example of where it's done well. When we played Adventures by Gaslight, I'm talking specifically now about Ciphers. So we played Adventures by Gaslight, the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective mystery case. And at some point in the game, you get this cipher, this difficult cipher. But a key element there is that you're not bottlenecked at that cipher, because there's lots of other things to do. So you encounter this cipher, and we get this occasionally in a Deadbolt Mystery Society game or something, where you've got this secret message, this cipher, and it's hard. You don't know how to solve it. But you also know, hey, we don't have to solve it right now. Maybe we can try a bit, make a little bit of progress, put it aside, work on other puzzles, work on other parts, and maybe an idea will come to us. Or even better, further along in the game, maybe on the next day, as we make progress, maybe you'll get more clues to the cipher. So that, in an ideal world, if you're really great at ciphers and you love them, maybe you can solve it with what you have right as soon as you get it. Maybe you could spend a week, or you get lucky, you could solve it right then. But if you can't solve it, you can put it aside, work on other puzzles, and maybe the next day you'll get another little part of the message or a clue to how to solve it. Maybe someone will tell you a little bit more about the details of the nature of the cipher, so that for players who love it and are really good, maybe they'll have enough information with a tiny bit of information to be able to solve it. But the rest of the group gets some extra hints as the days go on, as the puzzles go on, so that by the time they get to the end, it's much easier for them. So I think part of the problem here is we basically got the story, lots of discussion, and then we got this cipher, and it's the only thing for us to do. We can't wait for next week to get more information. We can't wait for hints about how to solve it. It's just that we're absolutely ground to a halt here. And we absolutely must solve it before we make any progress. And there's no way to get feedback on it or get more information. So I think that's that's one way to think of it. If you're a game designer and you want this very hard cipher to be part of your game, maybe you're making a spy game where the cipher is the key, I think ideally it would be a case that you'd give that cipher to the person early, communicate expectations that they don't have to solve it this session right away, and then give them, make it easier as the case goes on, so that at any point, if the players are really fascinated and can work on it, maybe they'll make progress and be able to solve it. If not, it won't interrupt the pacing of their progress through the narrative story. I mean, that's an ideal, or at least communicate to the players, hey, this is something that might take you forever. All right, well, let's go back. Let's see if we can attack this in a different way. We could just come up with other ideas and try them. You might guess that, well, if it was a keyword cipher and this has nothing to do with it, maybe you might expect some common keywords. They're playing the game of hearts. They might use the word heart. Now, I have tried that. I've put in, using the keyword cipher is a little bit painful to do manually. So I've gone to website. I typed in, use the keyword hearts to try to solve this with a keyword cipher. Didn't get anything. That's as far as I went. To me, that still feels wrong because it feels like these have to be numeric offsets to me. Could we attack it another way? Can we figure out ideally what the first word of one of these sentences would be? So if we could figure out what we think one of these words are, then maybe by lining it up with the cryptid version would give us some insight. All right, this is the line where I feel like is easiest to attack in terms of shifts and stuff. 3, 3, 10. 4, 5 kings, not so bad either. And here we have a phrase, blank, blank, comma, blank, blank, blank. It feels to me like we should be able to guess what those first two words are. Like, what would you, if it was, you might imagine something like dear blank, or what other phrases start with two words, comma? Like, are you addressing someone? Like, if we can figure out what this phrase has to be, maybe we need to start getting, again, it's a little painful to do this all with the tablet, but this is the kind of thing, like, there's probably online sites here, but I'm not sure I even can log into my chat GPT through the tablet, which is unfortunate. Let's see, maybe we can. Okay. What would be, let's see, substituting blanks for letters. What English phrases? What English? One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, comma. Is it gonna have anything useful for us? It didn't do it right because it's not making use of the comma. Okay. How about what are some English sentences that would begin with 2 words followed by a comma? I don't know why I have to do this instead of hitting enter. This is where the first word is 3 letters. Second word is 5 letters. Now I have to use this. Okay. So it's just sticking in commas where they wouldn't be in a normal sentence. Okay, so that's totally useless to us. That was a totally failed attempt. All right. Surely there are online Cipher tools that would let us do something like that, but it's too painful to use on the tablet. I just can't do it. I can't. It just creates too much frustration for me to try to use the tablet to search for websites while I'm being bombarded by ads and trying to make the tablet keyboard work. I just can't do it. So we're going to have to rely on manual skills here. Okay. So 3 letters. So maybe we'll make a list of plain text we might expect to see. If we think they're doing illegal stock trading, you might expect to see words like buy, sell, stock. We know there was mention of AT&T. Too bad I don't see a plus sign. I'd love to find that. Then we've got names. Maurice Hamoud. We've got Michael Want. We've got James Cunningham. We think that might be the writer of these messages, though. They don't seem to be signed. We think the recipient is Maurice Hamoud. Then we've got Dean Kimmel. Who else is in our case? Mason Carrier. Sawyer Hartman. Oh, you might expect to see the word hearts. That's what they're playing. Maybe card game. Here's another phrase with our commas. 3 letters, comma. What on earth phrase is this? Boy, that just seems like there are not that many phrases that will work like that. Like, it's clearly not the, comma, something, something, but what is it? It could be someone's 3-letter name, like Ted, comma, be fast. But we don't have any 3-letter name person, do we? We do have Jimmy James Cunningham, though, like Jim. That would be like an instruction. Name, comma, be something. Go fast. Of course, we don't know who's writing to who, right? Maybe let's read where these messages were found. Maybe there's an additional clue. Let's see. I was going through my father's office, finding strange documents. I don't understand what they mean. I'll show you if you're interested. Okay. Here's what. Well, maybe we should be smart. Maybe there is a clue here. More about parents. Offer me a job. Were you on your way over? I'm learning more about trains. Trip only took 2 days. Maybe that card which we were writing on, we will use to write other things. Like they're from Wisconsin. The son's name is Victor. Maybe if the father is writing notes, he would use his son's name as a key. I'd like to understand, I took these to be communicating between 2 people, but is it possible it's just his own private notes to himself? Then if there were private notes to himself, encrypted records, then it would make sense that he might use his son's name as the key or something else. All right, or the Wisconsin where he was from. Let's see. I'm getting married next year. Father wanted me to come out. Moved to Manhattan. He said yes. Offered to get me a job. You tell him who hires him? Okay. It was boring insurance. The office desk in the middle of the room with a typewriter, some filing cabinets, a few papers. Found a deck of playing cards. Leafed through all the cards. If one would be missing, King of Hearts. This seems like a little bit of a clue that Maurice didn't stage his own death and frame our guy. Okay, here's what you need to see. Messages written in some foreign language. All right, so they were originally written. Each page has a couple sentences and some numbers and letters scribbled in the corner, playing card ranks. Each message has a set of 3 ranks. Okay, so that seems to confirm that each sentence matches the 3. My father played cards a lot. I don't know much about the game he played. Police told me the killer was someone who played cards with him. I tried to show this to them. I typed it all up on one page. There's one more thing. He inherited the stocks, several stocks of New York Central Railroad. All right, let's look at this phrase. 2, 6, 8. Maybe we can get lucky and find 2, 6, 8. I wonder, okay, so I was thinking that these were messages back and forth. But no sign. But if these are his own records, then he could use a key of his private key, like the name of his son, Victor, or the town they're from, Wisconsin. Now, let's see if we can't find New York Central Railroad, if that was what was involved here. We're looking for a 2. This would be a pattern that would be hard to find by accident. 2, 4, and then an 8. Railroad. Okay, look for a 2, 7, and an 8. There aren't that many 8-letter words here, so it shouldn't be that hard to find if it is here. No. Well, that's a shame. I thought that might help us. Um, since we're having a hard time figuring out what words to find some plain text, which is a shame, I'm going to see if we get lucky with this one, because this S feels like it has to be an A or an I. Now, if it hits on this index, then we're screwed. But if it hits here or here, maybe it will help us. So I can see in the channel someone's suggesting something, but I'm going to try to write I'm going to try to index these to see if we get lucky. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is one of these things that's prone to errors, exactly the kind of thing I don't like. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3. Okay, so assuming I haven't made a mistake. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, assuming I haven't made a mistake, this S is an offset 3, which would match with the J. Now, I have written that J should be an 11. But if we think that S could only be an A or an E, this is where it would have been nice if we could find a whole phrase and then we could line it up. But if the S turns into an I or an A, and it's the third index, which we might have to recheck that I haven't made a mistake. So how do we take an S, apply a J to it to get an I or an A? If we think the J is our number 11, let's look at what J, if it's the J turned into an A, that would be a positive offset of 17. Wait, is it the J? No, sorry. If the S turned into an A, that would be a positive offset of S turned into an A, it would be a positive offset of 8. If the S turned into an I, it would be a positive offset of 16. So that neither of those goes anywhere near the 11. What about negative offset? If the S negative offset to an A, it's minus 18. And if it turns into an I, it's a minus 10. So this may be confirmation of this idea that we're off by 1. So if that's the letter I, and we're doing a negative shift of 10 letters, is it possible that instead of J being 11, it's the other way, and we've got a mapping that looks like what would we think it would be? Maybe that it's 12. What if we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace? And what if we say that the Jack is actually a minus 10 shift, minus 11 shift, minus 12 shift, minus 13 shift, possibly, minus 9, minus 8? Seemed counterintuitive to me, but if we're right about that S shifting to the letter I, that's how we would do it, by shifting minus 10 for this. Sarah, please. All right, which is, I think, what Nicola is suggesting a little bit here in the chat. So if that's right, then what would we expect here? Well, we've got a missing one here, so we're not going to work on that, but we're going to go back up to this. So we're going to do, the idea is minus 2, minus 2, minus 9. So can we take our original thing, erase these, all right. So what if a 3 is really, the 3, 3, 10 is really minus 2, minus 2, minus 9. And the only way to get that, Nicole is suggesting it, but the only way that I can see to infer that is to focus on this single letter known plain text and see that the J is really not a 10 shift backwards, but a minus, not an 11 shift, but a minus 10. Putting the ace on the other side still seems a little bit unlikely, but if we could figure out more plain text, maybe we would spot the pattern more easily. But since I'm having trouble with it, I'm focusing on this S. So let's see. If we turn this to a minus 2, minus 2. Okay. All right. Okay. 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 There you go. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do this painfully the manual way. Okay, U minus 2 is this row. This becomes a T. No, it doesn't. It becomes an S. Boy. Okay. All right. All the frustration and anger is all coming back. Trying to follow this row here. U becomes an S. T becomes an R. And I becomes a G. W becomes a U. J becomes an H. N becomes a K. G becomes an F. X becomes V. And we're doing the same thing for our second set of letters. G becomes an E. I don't even know if I did that right. U becomes an S. T becomes an R. I becomes a J. G becomes an E. Q becomes an N. J becomes an H. V becomes an S. Q becomes an O. F becomes a D. E becomes a C. So easy to make mistakes here trying to look. G becomes an F. I guess it's easy to undo it. E, F, G, N, M, N, O, P. This is wrong. Ah, just kill me. This is so ridiculous. You can see it's like simulating frustration. H, I, J, Q, R, S, T, U. Look, this is wrong. I swear to God, this is ridiculous. Q, D, E, F, C, D, E. Look at this. It's like this is like I've said this before, this is like the channel to show your special needs person that they can do things too. The kinds of errors I make. D, U, Q, R, S, T, G, H, I, U, V, W, H, I, J, K, L, M. Should be an L. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, the number of errors. I V. Nope. It's going to be Z. All right. So if this is right, then here would be our message. SEWROB. Sue Rob GHI. GHIUTZ. That does not seem right. SEWROB GHIUTZHOBLDY. That does not sound right. In fact, where's our first word? Our second word would be ROB. GH. No, that's wrong. All wrong. Okay. That's the problem with picking this one out because, well, for all, now I have to check if I made a mistake here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, let me go back to what I was doing, trying to find plain text here that makes sense to me. Where would be plain text? What should we be able to recognize? You might expect this. This is Maurice's private notes. I did want to see if he actually might decode it with the keyword cipher, his name, but then how do we make sense of these? If this is Hamoud talking, we also know American Family Insurance. Okay, that would be another phrase you might expect him to write. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be an 8-letter word, followed by a 5-letter word, followed by a 9-letter word. 8, 5, 9. Is this Central Railroad? It says CENTRALRAILRAIL No. Okay. 859. 859. That is a long word. What's this here? 4, 4, 4. That's a 12-letter word. Boy, that's a long word. Okay, no sign of a mention of his work. Where's our other names? Maurice Hamoud. But we think that's himself. How about Michael Want? That's our client. It'd be obvious that his name would be in here. That's a 7 and a 4. Michael Want. Just guessing at these things, obviously. But if we could find one set, one plain text with a known match, it might give us the clue we need. Michael Want. 7, 4. I don't see any 7 4s. Let me double check this. A Y, a -9 goes to P. I swear to God, I'm going to kill myself. Did I do this one wrong? Y -9 is a P. A D minus 9. This is so unpleasant to have to do. If this is our minus 9 row, I'm just backing up to doing this thing because it felt like it was almost words. A D minus 9 becomes a T. Maybe I did minus 10. Maybe I forgot. K minus 9 is a B. A B minus 9 is an S. A D minus 9. What am I supposed to do? What's wrong with my brain? This is the row we're on. B minus 9 is a U. It's like, how do you go through life and am I still alive at this age with the number of mistakes I make? X minus 9, it's just so easy to make these mistakes. The thing is with this, with minus 2, it's easy to see Q or ST. There's just one letter in between. This one is harder. All right, what about this? SEP would be our first word, SEP. That does not seem right. And then our next word would be 5 letters. SEP. ROUGH. ROUGH is a word, rough. SEP. Right here, Y minus 2 is a P. SEP. Rough. SEP. SEP rough. Let's try our next word. ROUGH. BUT, but SHOULD. Okay, so there it is. Okay. So we first tried this, that seemed promising, but I had written down, I probably did a minus 10 here instead of minus 9. That got us off track. But SEP, why is SEP? Is it? This is another one of these exact cases where you do SEP and you give up. All right, so we've got the code. Nicola was right in intuition, and we could get it this way. The errors, the little tiny errors that ruin everything. All right, but now we have to decode it all. Now we have to decode it all and understand what that word SCP. Okay, and then we've got ones that are question marks. So All right, well, the worst is over, but now we've got the brute force work. So our intuition right from the start was all correct, that these are Caesar cipher shift offsets to every other third order. It's sort of shocking how the initial instinct of exactly how to decode this was correct, but to layer on top of that, that these offsets are off by one, just made enough of the combinatorics that we've gotten lost. Now, if we had figured out a single, well, you can see why we didn't get this step rough, unless I'm mistranslating some of these letters. Or STU, EFG. It's very odd that SE, is this wrong? Y minus 9 is a P. You can see why we didn't uncover that plain text, but it's only this single letter here that points to this being a jack being a minus 10 instead of a minus 11. But if we could have found any other plain text, we might have been able to figure it out. I just couldn't find any other plain text to lock onto, which was a shame. All right, now, how are we going to mechanically decode this? Because I am not going to do it by hand. I wonder if we can find an online date shift, because we did identify, Martin Gardner called this a date shift cipher. Let me see if I can't search for an online date shift cipher. Let's see, maybe we'll get lucky. Online date shift cipher. Decode, this is the one I sometimes use. Is this got an option that lets us rotate the Caesar cipher shift? Doesn't look like it. We need something that lets us rotate through multiple shifts. Let me see what the ROT cipher is. No, that's a different encoding. All right, let's try date shift cipher. No one likes that, huh? That's what Martin Gardner calls it. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. This is what we want here. We could automatic brute force it. There we go. This is what we want right here. All right. So let's do our line. So we think it's 3310, but really we're going to code that as 229. Okay, and now we're going to try our first phrase, UGYTQDIJ. Let's see if that works for us. Nothing happens. Okay, thanks. Change of shift each character. How about now? Okay, it's doing it. It's just, it doesn't show it there. It shows it here. Okay, there it is, sep rough. Can you see that? All right, it's missing a little bit of the, it's missing the first letter. Okay, but here we've got it. we're using this successive shifts cipher is what it calls it. Okay. Now we can type in our full message. Let's start at well, let's do this one. Now I still got to type this in, but do I have to type this in, or can I not use my copy and paste? Okay. Let's see if we can do this. Here is our thank you, Nicola, for helping out. Okay. Let's see if we can't do this a little more automatic. Okay, so there's our encrypted message. We've given it the sequence 229, shifting every character, decrypt. You're having a hard time seeing this. This Sep Rough. It's a shame. Okay, Sep Rough, but should recover. Must insist on code. Source is paranoid. Sorry for hassle. Fun, we hope. Know you like hearts. All right, well, at least we've decoded this. Sep Rough. I'm not sure what that means, but this isn't our first sentence. So let's put this in here and we'll decode it together. All right, let's do this one, which we're going to call. Okay. So there's our code. And this one we believe is a 3, 4. And then we said our king is going to be a 12. It is interesting that I'm not having to use minus, whereas in my thinking, it's a minus. All right, let's see if this can decode it. Welcome, valued client. Hello, Maurice. Updates encrypted, top secret, source at stock exchange, knows when and where to find intel, close relationship to MC. Who's our MC? Our MC is our Mason carrier. This sounds like it could be our. I mean, I'm talking about the case now, but Mason Carrier could be our MC, and this could be Sawyer Hartman who's writing this. Okay, so let's put these in here. We think this one is this one. So MC could be Mason Carrier, the guy who runs the games. And we're told that in our story that Hartman is the guy who has lots of contacts and gets insider information. I wonder if our source is going to be Jimmy Cunningham, our bad guy. Or if the writer of this message is Jimmy Cunningham, but hopefully we're going to find out soon. All right, we got a couple more to go here. All right, what a relief that this is basically solved. Almost foiled several times by my sloppiness. So this was a hello here. I'm looking for plain text we could have gotten. Could we have figured out this was going to be hello something? Probably not. Although we knew this was to or from Maurice, so maybe we should have guessed that the first sentence would have his name in it. I'm not sure. All right, here we go. Well, okay, so there's our encryption, our encrypted text, and we think the rotations for this one are ace, unknown, jack. So now if this ace is the 13, then we should have 13 something 10. So let's try 13, 1, 10. Let's see what we get. Okay, you can see that that looks completely wrong. Doesn't just look like every third letter is wrong. It looks like more than that. 13, 1, 10. I wonder if the ace is a 1. Let's try 1, 2, 10. Maybe the ace is not a 13. How about 1, 2, 10? Because we're not sure about the ace. That also looks completely wrong in more than one. I think I'm using, am I using the wrong? No, I'm using the right one. All right, we're going to skip this one rather than get angry. We're going to go to one that we're not missing any from. Maybe we can get more of a clue on the aces and everything. 3, 5, 8. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, so this one is our 3, 5, 8, which we're putting in as 2, 4, 7. New market intelligence verified in person. Bank directive is warned top clients. And then something's gone wrong. WACRK-DC. What has gone wrong? All right. Well, it may be that the offsets got all messed up. We'll come back to that, I guess. And we could try manually solving that, or it could be there's an extra character somewhere that's throwing off the offsets. Where's, oh, that is the original. It looks right, but maybe something is confusing the decoder, or maybe it's a transcription error or something. Okay, let's see if we can't guess this one, since we're only missing the last third here. Okay, we think this one is 2, 5 something, which is 4. Let's try this. I guess there's no reason not to try. Okay. don't know why it's not showing this corner of the screen. Okay, so probably it's source found something, right? So the C should be a U, the M should be an E. All right, so if what the letter that's wrong here is that a C should be a U and the M should be an E, let's see what that would lead us to. If a C should be a U, I get an offset of 8. Let's try that fix here. So it was the last digit, right? Okay, let's see if that's an 8. UW. Okay, one less. 7. This shows you how useful it would be if you could just identify a little bit of plain text. You just couldn't quite do it. Okay. I mean, I don't know why I'm off by 1. Source found missing ticker tape in ML office. Michael Lawrence office. Sad, not worth your time. Source found missing ticker tape in Michael Lawrence office. Sad, not worth your time. Not sure what that means, but now that was a offset of 10. Why does C going to U represent an offset of 10? It's really strange. Oh, because it was an error rather than an untouched code. Okay, fine. All right. Don't worry, it's not relevant. I'll just do it better next time. All right, now what this means actually for our text for our game mystery, not 100% sure. All right, now let's go back to this one and why we were having trouble with this one. It's because we weren't 100% sure about our ace. I guess if our ace was a 1, maybe it would be a 0. Let's try this again. So is our offset here ace question mark jack? So we think it's a 0, 10. Sure looks like more than one every third letter missing. So were we right the first time that the ace is a 13? And we're guessing at this one. We're expecting to be able to only have one of every 3 letters wrong. But we must be doing the ace wrong because it sure looks like more than one of every 3 letters. And if I told you it was irritating that it's not showing the far left of the screen, that would be an understatement to me. The missing letter. It's just I guess I'm just gonna try to get the middle one that's missing right. All these ads are being shoved in our face. Oh, looked like maybe that 3 was correct. Was this the 3? I'm a little tilted here. I gotta slow down. We know there's the I. That's our third thing. This is the whole thing we focused in on. This I is our 10 here. And then this middle number is the one we're guessing at, but then this should be the ace. I think this should be so the 10 is right for the jack. According to me, this should be a 13. But is it possible? Maybe I'm wrong, and that is right, and we just have to find this middle one. Could be anything. I mean, if the first rotation is correct, then we should be able to look at this and it should jump out at us. But I'm frustrated and I'm flailing about. The other possibility is that this one is more than 3. That somehow the ace is doing something different. All right, we got to take a break. I'll see you in 8 minutes. Okay, we're back. I wouldn't use the word having fun, but we're making slow progress here. I think the ace is going to be a 0, so I've rewritten for the third time our substitutions here. Or we're basically doing a shift to decipher minus the number that's here, -1. We tried with the aces over here, but I think it makes sense that the ace is over here and it's actually a 0, meaning don't shift. And then what we get is this, and I think that's mostly right, but it makes sense that the first word there, which is B-L-I-Y, is probably B-U-Y, buy. It's probably a buy instruction. And that would make this middle smudged letter, smudged number here, a 5, which maps to a 4, which decrypts as by HWCC. So that's another way to throw us. It's throwing us off because some of these words aren't real because they're stock market symbols. Solid Outlook would never throw game. No match for the king. They call me the HM because I get the hearts. They call me the hearts master because I get the hearts, maybe. These just look like regular good stock picks, but all right, let's just finish doing this rather than try to make game sense of any of it here. This was our statement here. Oh, rough. September is rough, but should recover. September was rough. Rough. September was rough. Should recover. Must insist on code. Sources paranoid. Sorry for hassle. Fun. We hope you like. Know you like hearts. Warn top clients. All right, we don't know what's going on here, but this is probably messages from Sawyer Hartman. Source found missing ticker tape in ML. Sounds like the source might be Jimmy Cunningham, but he's giving him the ticker tape. All right, let me not try to solve the game messages here. Now we've got to decode 2 more that are even more partial. I know the channel wants me to use the automatic, but I just don't feel like that is in keeping with the spirit of this, but I got to admit, it's not fun. All right, so this one is question mark 6, which is really question mark 5. So 0, 0, 5. So we were really going to brute force it. We'd have 13 times 13, what, 126 combinations to try to brute force. But the idea should be that we would be able to figure out some of these words, so we shouldn't have to. But you can't even read the word on the left-hand side, and I have to shove this ad on your face. This is just... All right. Having to stare at these ads is pretty painful. But if we could figure out what some of this plain text was, we could figure out these. You could imagine that the reasonable compromise would be to try all 10 of the first letter offsets and then guess the other one. The second letter we've got right. Is that right? No. The third one we've got right. So the R and the T are right. R and the T. It seems like maybe the second one might even be right. E-R-I-T. Hard to know, though. Do I really want to try this every... I said it sounded like the second one might be right. Oh, I really don't want to look at ads for an hour. Okay, brute force. Brute force. This is not fun anymore. Let's see if it can figure it out. All right, there it is. So 1, 4, 5. Market turmoil ahead. May not recover. Plan of action, borrow NYCRR. So that's the New York Central Railroad. Remember, we were looking for that plain text. There's a reason we couldn't find it because it's been abbreviated. DK will borrow AT&T. Avoid tension sell-off. Source has interested parties. Okay, so here's our decrypted. Dean Kimmel will borrow AT&T. So that's the DK. 1, 4, 5. Okay, so let's put this in here. So what we're told here is that this is really 1, 4, 5, which is the same as 2, 5, 6, because we're all off by 1 in this code. Let's try this one. Nerves of steel, almost there. Intelligence is solid. NYCRR confirmed. Overpriced. AT&T confirmed. Overpriced. Possible trend. Current course is safest. Okay, well, this was all the insight. This is the whole idea of shorting the stocks. You buy it, it's overpriced, so it's going to drop. AT&T confirmed overpriced. That's because of the insider source. So that's what they're doing. They're shorting these stocks by borrowing them. All right, guys, come on. Oh, guys, come on. Come on, guys. Stop making me do this. What's wrong with you? I wish they would just destroy the entire mobile system. All right, doesn't matter. It's okay. And this was inferred as shifts of 1, 2, 3. Oh, 1, 2, 3, which is really 2, 3, 4. Okay. Please go away now. Okay. So there's text in this document that can never be erased. Why do we have to live like this? I don't understand why we have to live like this. Why? I don't understand why I have to live like this. Just got some text in this document that can't be deleted. And there's the keyboard again. Can you reload it? No. You just want to do your own thing. You just want to do your own thing. It's just mystery text. It's all a game. Just mystery text in the document. Can I? What is it? What's down there? I delete all this. Does it go away? And now what happens if I paste it? Does the extra part come back? No. Now it's all gone. What the fuck? Please stop. What's happening? What is this? This is some user interface thing that I don't understand? What's happening? Why is this here? What is it? Please. Okay. All right. I gotta let it go. All right. Well, we've decoded everything except for this part here, which we're not quite sure what's going on. This seems like a mistranslation. Either it's a typo or it's got the offset wrong. I guess maybe I'm going to come back in here and do it again. Let's see if we paste it in. Let's see. There is some oddness with spaces. Let me just do this and see if we can brute force it and see if it can figure it out any better. That's really confused it completely. Its automatic process got short-circuited because of the words at the bottom don't translate properly. All right, well, let's put in our manual code for this. PID. So this was our 247. Now, how would you guess that that's wrong? Well, here's one. These fucking ads. Our whole fucking world is advertisements now. When I make a YouTube video, YouTube forces me to say like 5 times for each live stream, no, I don't want you to submit ads on this video. Then I have to answer it again and again and again. All right, so maybe if it's off by letters, then adding a dummy letter would realign this part. Let's see if that can work. Yep, look at that. So that's a typo in the original text, I believe. It's missing, the alignment got messed up. So I just stuck in a dummy letter, and you can see, then we got the alignments for the first, second, third, first, second, third. So it just says standby. Okay. So you could just imagine that whoever encoded it here did a mistake here. So this really says, and all right, so we have our full messages. And remember, these are in the possession of Maurice Hamoud. So you can see they're all messages to Hamoud, giving him insider information for stock trades. Welcome valued clients. You might guess that they're from Sawyer Hartman, which we're even told in the letter that there's lots of correspondence with Sawyer Hartman. So Sawyer Hartman is the big shot at Chase, who we think has lots of insider information. Let's walk through this a little bit. Welcome valued client, hello Maurice, updates encrypted top secret source at stock exchange, knows when or where to find intel, close relationship to Mason Carrier. So that's either, well, it could be any of the players. September rough, but should recover, must insist on code, sources paranoid, sorry for hassle, fun, we hope, know you like hearts. By HWCC, solid outlook, would never throw game, no match for the king. They call me the hearts master because I get the hearts, maybe. Would never throw a game. No match for the king. It sounds like they might be talking about Yankees. We got some little, I don't know what HWCC. Maybe we could even. HWCC stock market symbol. Houston Wire and Cable. All right. No, let's not worry about it. No match for the king. New market intelligence verified in person. Bank directive is warned top clients. Market turmoil ahead may not recover. Plan of action, borrow New York Central Railroad. Dean Kimmel will borrow AT&T. Avoid attention or sell off. Source has interested parties. So we know Dean Kimmel is involved in this insider trading. We know Maurice Hamoud is involved in insider trading. We think this is coming from Sawyer Hartman, I'm guessing, is providing the information. Source found missing ticker tape in Michael Lant's office. Sad, not worth your time. I don't really understand what he's saying here. Sad, not worth your time. I think that suggests that the source is going to be Jimmy Cunningham, who's broken into his office. But it is odd because I thought Jimmy Cunningham is providing him with the ticker tape. And then Nerves of Steel, almost there. Intelligence is solid. New York Central Railroad confirmed overpriced. AT&T confirmed overpriced. Possible trend. Current course is safest. Doesn't really help our game much. All right, well, we can, Debbie Levy is here. She says, HM is Hartman. Maybe it's not Heartmaster. Maybe it's Heartman because I get the hearts. Maybe. Okay, well, it does confirm our theory that Sawyer Hartman is the guy providing all this information because he's the chase guy who says his top clients get inside information. So, all right, either way, I think what we've got is the person giving this insider information is Hartman. He's giving it to Dean Kimmel. He's giving it to Maurice Hamoud. Now, who is his source? That's the question. Or does he have multiple sources? But it seems more likely that the source is Jimmy Cunningham, who's broken into Michael Lant's office. It is weird. Source found missing ticker tape in Michael Lant's office. Not worth your time. Don't know what that means. That's a very weird thing. Source has interested parties. That's also confusing. So there's a couple things that are confusing here. This does seem to clarify, we're talking about game mystery now, even though I think we're going to stop and we can finish talking about it online. But from a game mystery, the big questions we had were who was involved in this and were they involved in the Hamoud murder, and why is Hamoud involved enough in the illegal stuff to kill him? And this does not shed much light on that. I mean, it does suggest that they're all involved in insider trading. Well, at least Hamoud, Sawyer Hartman, Dean Kimmel, and then this mystery source, which seems like it's either Jimmy Cunningham. We know Michael Lant's not involved. But it also doesn't feel like there's any reason to kill Hamoud. I thought it was going to turn out that Jimmy Cunningham and Hamoud were the only two involved somehow, and that Hamoud was killed not just to get Michael Lant's wife, but to keep him quiet. But this seems to suggest that that's not an issue at all. It's also weird that who the source is. Source at stock exchange knows where and when and where to find intel. Close relation to Maurice MC, which is going to be Maurice Carrier. Mason Carrier. Jimmy Cunningham, who also works at the stock exchange. Well, maybe in a different letter, he has a close relationship to Mason Carrier. Maybe we did hear about that somewhere, but I've forgotten. Knows where to find intel. I guess that's consistent with it's weird because it was Hamoud's possessions, wasn't it? Oh, no. Okay. Yes, it is. Okay. Sorry. I forgot who had this information. Okay. This is Jimmy Cunningham's. It's Jimmy Cunningham's. Okay. This makes a little more sense. We broke into James Cunningham's house. It's Jim Cunningham that's talking to Hartman a lot because Jimmy Cunningham is the source. And here we're told that the source knows where and when to find intel. Well, that makes complete sense because the source is Cunningham, and here he's gathering the intel. So Jimmy Cunningham is the source. He's gathering intel from on the ground from his local people, providing it to Hartman, the big shot at Chase, who's running insider trading and selling the information to his top clients, who are big spenders. Okay, so not worth your time. I'm still not sure what that's about, but okay, this clarifies that. It's Cunningham who's the source on the ground. Well, that confirms it for sure, and here he is making deals with Hartman. The weird thing is why Hamoud is getting killed. Right? Because Hamoud is just another client. It would make more sense that our guy Cunningham would kill off Hartman because Hartman is the one person who knows he's the illegal source, but maybe Hamoud somehow has gotten himself into more trouble. It's just weird that Hamoud would be the person killed by Cunningham. Like, I mean, he's trying to frame Michael Lant, but it's just a weird choice to pick Hamoud, since Hamoud doesn't have any other reason to be killed. All right, but we can talk about that another day. We did end up decrypting the code. It was not fun, but lessons to be learned. And I'm still not sure where to go, but we can meet again to talk about what we're going to submit as our final stuff. And guess we know who's involved in the insider trading, but it doesn't look like anyone else is involved in murdering, although We haven't investigated Hartman enough to know if he's in on something. All right, well, we'll talk about it offline on the Discord or maybe again in a special meeting. At least we did solve the cipher tonight. Whew. Can put that behind us. See you next time.